At a certain point when it's someone else's money and it's someone else's risk, I tend to take a few less risks, whereas when it's mine, I'm willing to roll the dice. You know, we've burned ourselves a little bit. We're getting about a quarter of the amount of fruit at this point that we should because I've made mistakes. But at the end of the day, the vine doesn't know. You know, we work a little harder, we get a little less fruit. It's not as economical, but we didn't get into it for that.
Welcome to the Winemakers podcast. In each episode, we meet one winemaker and get the chance to hear their story on their turf. We walk through the vineyard, taste their wine, and share a home-cooked meal. If you haven't already, visit thewinemakersseries.com to order your Season 1 case, one bottle for each winemaker. Then pull cork, press play, and enjoy. On this episode of The Winemakers, we meet Anthony Yount, an extremely talented guy who found his way in life at a bizarrely young age and is crafting the estate of his dreams stick by stick, row by row, brick by brick, one animal at a time. Here's a reminder that Paso Robles still is the Wild West, one of the few places on the planet you can grow both full-bodied Bordeauxs and intricate Rhones. Last year, the Wine Spectator and the Wine Enthusiast both had significantly more Paso wines ranked in the top 25 than any other region in the world. And yet, it is still a community of cowboys and farmers, like Anthony, making wine with crazy names like Ditch Digger and Chair. While moulding his estate and scheming up names, Anthony is still running Denner's 130-acre, multi-million-dollar operation. With his track record, he could be making wine at any winery in the world, yet he chooses to make tiny quantities clinging to the edge of York Mountain while watching his livestock, vines, and daughter grow.
My end goal is to be able to sit down to dinner in 5 years and everything that we eat comes off this property.
Yeah.
We grow the lettuce, we made the wine, we raise the chicken or the lamb or the pig or the steer, and down to the herbs.
From Cellar Media, this is The Winemakers, Paso Robles, California. I'm Louise Houghton. Right in the middle of the winding two-lane highway that runs from Paso Robles to Cambria through the Santa Lucia Mountains, there's a nondescript dirt road shaded by oak trees. Near the end of that road, if you can make it up the almost vertical driveway, you'll find yourself at the first level of the Royal Nonesuch farm. This is where I first meet Anthony, wearing a t-shirt, well-worn jeans, and boots. He greets me with an ear-to-ear grin as we head out to tour his property.
Waylon, you coming?
Yeah.
Come on.
Waylon is the dog.
I'm gonna just have him sit bitch here.
And yeah, he was named after Waylon Jennings.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right.
Can you move over a
Yeah,
little bit,
come on,
Waylon?
Come on.
At this point, I'm sandwiched in next to Waylon in Anthony's pale ocean blue 1972 Land Cruiser with no doors and no top and clearly no muffler.
All right.
Oh, let's go. So what is this here on the right?
This is Claret Blanche. Everything here is on bush vine, so it just sprawls out. That's why there's just one stake. The barn is actually where my folks live.
Here?
Yeah. So we built the barn and skinned the inside as a house. And they live here half the year with us, help us in the vineyard and with children. And
It's a three-tiered property with the farm at the bottom. As we climb upwards in the Land Cruiser, we pass his white one-story house with a wraparound porch. A little further up, we pass the cliché big red barn. 10 more minutes of ascending past rows of grapevines, we reach the top of the vineyard.
4 blocks of Grenache here. This is Graciano. We bought Monastrell from the nursery, which is supposed to be a Mourvedre clone from Yecla in the south of Spain. Found out last year that it is not Monastrell, but it's Graciano, which is a grape they grow in Spain as well.
What do you mean you found out?
A few of us in the area planted the same selection of Monastrell, and none of us thought it looked like Monastrell, and finally someone sent a cutting in to UC Davis for genetic testing, and they said, well, it's not Mourvedre, it's Graciano. So we found out. For me, perfection is uninteresting, so we like things a little more wild here.
Our driving tour ends with spectacular views and vines in every direction.
So, super steep site surrounded by forests. We have 25 acres here. We've only planted 7. Historically, the road we're on is called Shadow Canyon Road, and it was a bootlegger's road during Prohibition. It was all gravel, and it used to wash out in the winter. And there's actually a horse trail that goes out the backside and drops onto Dover Canyon Road that the police couldn't get over. So all the bootleggers up here used to make their shine, and then when the police found them, they'd run it back over the top, and they couldn't catch them. So there wasn't really a lot of grapevines out here, but this AVA was formed in 1982.
And that's not the AVA, the Paso AVA.
It's not Paso, yeah, it's its own AVA. And so it is sort of this historic area, but what really attracted us to the site was there's so many different soil types and so many different exposures here. On our little tour, you could see just how steep it was, but also we have sandy soils, we have some clay soils, we have limestone, we have sandstone, we have mudstone, and each one of those is going to give a different flavor profile to it. And for me, wine should be complex, and you build complexity by having different characteristics that you can put together. And so having those different aspects and soil types, I think will be more interesting together than they will be on their own.
I want to know your story.
Okay.
You know, you started off, obviously, you grew up in
St. Louis,
St. Louis,
Missouri.
Okay.
The wine capital of the world.
Yeah, drinking beer.
Drinking beer. Drinking Budweiser, and Boone's Farm was my version of wine.
Okay.
So we had a little piece of property that we rented in outstate Missouri on a river, and our landlords had cattle. I used to help them with branding and castrating, and we processed chickens on the ranch, buck bales in the summer, whatever they'd let me do. And I wanted to get into ag, and I knew I didn't want to be in commodity agriculture, corn and soybeans and pigs, everything that was happening in the Midwest. And I looked into Cal Poly, which had a great agribusiness program, and that sort of got me out here. I wasn't into wine yet, but the lambs are going. Speaking of commodity agriculture, I thought I'm either going to grow avocados or write wine labels or brand baby lettuce or something like that, something real romantic. And I guess I ended up in probably the most romantic of all of that, making wine.
Like a lot of winemakers, Anthony's journey in wine started with one memorable bottle.
I was on a road trip between my senior year in high school and freshman year in college with my brother in Montana, and he took me to this great restaurant in Missoula, and he's a little older, and told the waitress I want to drink this bottle of 98 Beaucastel, which is a Grenache-based blend from France.
Yeah.
But my brother's not 21, and the only way I'll order it is if you'll serve him. So we ordered it, she served it to me, and that was like the eye-opener of wine can be better than Boone's Farm and Budweiser. That was my revelation wine that turned me on to drinking wine.
So back to your story. You went to study, realized that you started liking wine.
Yep.
And then how did you end up interning at Denner?
Well, I took a viticulture class as part of my general electives and just absolutely loved it. My brother, same brother who turned me on to that 98 Beaucastel, came out for my 21st birthday. We went wine tasting, and we actually tasted at Denner.
Denner Vineyards is a stunning 156-acre estate planted in 1999 by Ron Denner. In a previous life, Ron owned Ditch Witch dealerships all over the Northwest United States and made a bunch of money when everyone got cable TV installed in the 80s and 90s. Every ditch dug was by one of Ron's machines. That's why some of Denner's most famous wines are called the Ditch Digger and the Dirt Worshipper.
And Ron and Marilyn Denner were doing the tasting. We'll head right that way. Okay. And I I love the wines, I love the property. The vineyard was spectacular. They gave us a whole tour of the gravity flow system, got to go through the vineyard. And Brian, who was the winemaker at the time, Marilyn had told me he was looking for an intern, and I said, well, I'd like to apply. And she gave me his cell phone, and I called him up the next day, and he said, well, I'm not going to hire anyone that Marilyn wants me to hire, and hung up on me.
Oh, no.
So about 2 weeks later, the posting was online on a job site, and I applied again and came in for an interview, didn't mention anything about being there or having met Marilyn, and I got the job. And I did that internship at Denner and just absolutely loved the industry, the people I met. It was one of the few jobs you could have and drink beer at work.
Yeah.
You know, and no one was pissed about. So I came back to work right after I graduated. I worked another harvest at Denner, and we're still a small company, but we were really small then. And I helped with the bookwork and helped in the tasting room, cleaned the drains, did the bottling line, whatever they needed. And then when harvest came, obviously it was full-time plus. But after a couple vintages, I wanted to see something else, do something else. So I landed an internship down in Argentina at Vinacobos in Mendoza. And I was getting ready to fly down there. I was going to do a little Spanish immersion thing, then hit harvest. January in St. Louis. And the weather can be spotty. It can be snowing one day and then 70 the next day. And I took my brother's motorcycle out for a spin and hit a patch of black ice and shattered my kneecap. 16 pieces. So it was the day before I was supposed to leave. So I did not do Argentina.
The Winemakers podcast is supported by Winerist.com. Winerist.com is dedicated to making your wine and food travel simple. Discover experiences in over 130 destinations worldwide that are curated to fulfill all your wine and food dreams. You've heard from the experts. Now explore the regions that inspire them with Winerist.com.
I lived in my parents' basement for 6 months doing physical therapy and picked up working for my dad, who had a small ad agency, just to stay busy and learn something else. And as soon as I was back on 2 feet, I packed up my truck and drove right out here. And I didn't really have a job at the time. I called a winemaker I'd met through Denner and said, I'm looking for something. Do you know of anything? And that was Chris Cherry at Via Creek. And he said, well, I'm looking. And I sat on my tailgate in 105-degree weather in a parking lot in Salina, Kansas, and had like an hour-long conversation with Chris about how it might work. And 2 days later, I was sitting in his living room, and we hatched a plan for me to go over to Via Creek and become the cellar master. Chris Cherry said, well, when are you going to make your own wine? I said, I don't know. I really want to make whites, and no one really does that here in Paso. And he said, well, what do you want to make? I said, I want to make Grenache Blanc and Roussanne. He said, what vineyard do you want to use? Well, I want to use Self-Family Vineyard for Grenache Blanc, and I want to use Jamesbury Vineyard for Roussanne. He said, okay, let's go do it. So he gave me my first barrel and made some introductions, actually supplied me with my first ton of Roussanne from Jamesbury Vineyard. And I learned very early on that as a winemaker, you're only as good as your grapes. And so you always want to work with farmers that are better than you are. And I'd had the Roussanne from Jamesbury Vineyard from a few other producers and really love Roussanne as a grape just because it's sort of so textural and savory and interesting. And Justin Smith, who owns Jamesbury Vineyard, well, it was his dad at the time, now Justin, they're the best farmers in the area. They've been doing it for now two generations, and that says a lot.
Yeah.
So Chris really helped me get into that Roussanne. I actually call that wine the Rustler because I didn't have the contract for it. We call it a late night rustling of grapes. You know, maybe I went and picked it when no one was looking, but we won't tell anyone.
Winemaking wasn't the only thing Anthony learned from Via Creek.
And that's really where I picked up the whole farm thing. Chris and Joanne had a restaurant at the time downtown, and they had a couple of goats, chickens. I brought in a pig program because I've always been passionate about pigs. We started doing Berkshires, And it was just a complete sort of farm stay job, and that's really where the idea for what we have here, the Royal Nonesuch Farm, came from. It was wanting to create that lifestyle for us.
After 2 years at Via Creek, the winemaker at Denner left. Ron had been impressed with Anthony when he was an intern, and instead of hiring a famous, experienced winemaker, he decided to take a risk. Anthony became the chief winemaker at Denner in 2009.
The first couple of years, it was really hard. I tried to get him to taste the wines with me.
Yeah.
And give me some input, or maybe sit in on blending sessions, and he wouldn't give me anything. He said, "You're the winemaker, make the wines." And I realize now how much of a blessing that really is when, you know, I was scared shitless at age 24 when he gave me the reins and said, "You're the winemaker."
It's hard to overstate how rare this is. Most winemakers will work for more than 10 years before they get a chance to put their name on a bottle for a multi-million-dollar label like Denner.
I was fortunate that, he saw some potential, and we ran the facility as an alternating proprietorship, which means that we leased out space to other winemakers.
Okay.
So not only was I winemaker for Denner, but I was also the facility manager. So I got to manage 7 other winemakers that all had their own vineyards or bought their own fruit and made their wine at Denner. And all of them obviously were older than me and more experienced and had degrees, but I also got to ask them questions and sort of had this safety net. And we created this group of almost like a think tank in winemaking, where you could taste this, taste that, hey, I've got this issue, what should I try? And, 7 winemakers, you're going to get 11 different opinions.
In 2014, Wine Spectator pinpointed Anthony Yount and Denner Vineyards as the epicentre of West Paso's wine scene.
I learned really quickly I want to make wines that are unique and singular, and in order to do that, you've got to take a lot of risks. And you got to make wines that maybe are not perfect or polished, and then, blend them together with something to make something that's aromatically unique and texturally, intense and makes you think. The best way I can describe it is I want to make a wine that's suspenseful. You smell one thing and you taste something different, or it's not what you expected it to be.
After a few years at Denner, Anthony decided to put down roots in Paso. He bought his farm on York Mountain and started planting his own vines.
It's a miracle that a lot of these are just twigs. We took cuttings off other plants and we stuck them in the ground. Most of this place is not planted on rootstock, which is sort of the new way of planting vineyards all across the world. And we just took sticks and we stuck them in the ground, and they grow roots and they become plants and they have fruit, and yeast eat that fruit and create alcohol. It's beautiful.
And then this vineyard here, we're going to see the first grapes from it this year, right?
Well, we started planting in 2013. Our first harvest was just a couple of barrels home wine because production was so small. But then in 2016, we were finally able to make the wine we wanted to make, and that's going to be bottled on June 1st. We call this the Royal Nonesuch Farms.
The Winemakers podcast is inspired by the Winemakers of Paso Robles coffee table book. The Winemakers of Paso Robles coffee table book is the perfect gift for the wine lover on your list. It took more than a year of interviews and photo shoots to make this 328-page large format book. It's the perfect book to curl up with a glass of wine and escape to wine country. The Winemakers of Paso Robles. Check it out on Amazon.com and at WNMKRS.com. That's WNMKRS.com. There are only a few first editions left, so get yours today. The Winemakers podcast is supported by PasoRoblesWineries.net. PasoRoblesWineries.net is the best resource for planning the perfect trip to Paso. Decide where you want to taste, eat, stay, and explore all in one place with the only comprehensive map of every winery, distillery, and brewery in the area. You can also find tasting coupons and hospitality discounts. Text SPECIALS to 24587 for coupons. That's SPECIALS to 24587. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Paso Robles Wineries. PasoRoblesWineries.net is the best place to plan your next trip to Paso.
What are you cooking?
A chicken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
With which wine?
This wine off here. We're going to have an all-estate meal.
Okay.
I like people that cook interesting food, and usually people that cook interesting food care about where their food comes from. So, you know, that's one of the things with this ranch is we try and raise most of the proteins that we eat. So we raise our own pigs, our own lambs, our own chickens. We got to put the bird on.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that.
So it's been brining since first thing this morning, and we'll pull it out and season it from there. I'm just going to throw a little salt and pepper on it, and then we're going to truss it real quick. I like to keep it simple. Taste the bird, not the seasoning. Mm-hmm. So let's check the fire.
Okay.
And we'll see if we're ready to dump that. We've got some nice coals going. Feels hot. We're gonna center the bird a little bit. Push the button and it turns. Then from there,
Fantastic.
we're gonna throw the lid on, vent it a little, and let it cook.
There you are. Okay.
It does the rest for us.
Okay, into the cellar,
Into the cellar.
which I've been warned is going to be cold.
It's gonna be cold and it's gonna be nasty to get there. But this is what keeps people out of here.
What do you mean it's going to be nasty?
Well, we've got a little mouse problem in the shop there.
We walk down a flight of stairs, through a covered carport, and over to a shabby-looking door on the side of the house. We pass through this little room stacked with tools and farm implements, and open a second door leading into a pristine wine cellar. The first thing that catches my eye is a black pig's hoof sticking out of a barrel of salt. The next thing I notice is the volume of wine stacked floor to ceiling. It doesn't seem possible to fit another bottle in this room.
We're underneath the house, but it's not entirely under the house. Half of it faces out. And the person we bought this from had 6 kids, and they homeschooled them. So this actually, at one point, was one of the kids' bedrooms. It was a lot nicer than this. It had carpet in it, and we pulled out the carpet, and because this was on the north side of the house and half underground, we turned it into the wine cellar. One of the things for me as a winemaker that is so important is research and development. So we spend a lot of time traveling the world and learning about other wine regions and other wineries, and we also buy a lot of wine from other places. And I'm not a collector of fancy wines or real high-end wines. I'm really just a collector of the wines that mean a lot to me. And most of the wines that we have in here are places that we've been or places we're really passionate about. And there's really nothing that's unobtainium here other than it's really important to me and Hillary. So this is one of our favorite estates, probably in the whole world. This is in a region called Gigondas. And Gigondas is just north of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And this is Château de Saint-Côme. And the original cellar here was from the Roman era. And they have old concrete tanks from the 500s. But they don't use them, but they're there in this underground cellar. And he makes sort of the wines of the style that I want to make that are pure to their place. He doesn't destem anything. It's fermented in concrete. It's aged in neutral oak.
Oh, it sounds like your wine.
They just are what they are, you know, so we take influence from that. Here, this is Tokaj. I'm a big fan of Hungarian oak. And it is a botrytized wine. So it's made from grapes that have been infected with botrytis, or the noble rot, and this is from Hungary, and this is a woman and her daughter.
Explain this. Hang on, wait.
Okay, so noble rot is a mold called botrytis, and it infects the grapes and sucks all the water out, thus concentrating the sugar and the acid naturally, and you can ferment it. The most famous of which is Sauterne in Bordeaux, but in Hungary, they probably started doing it long before they did in Bordeaux. And because Hungary was occupied by the Soviets, they lost pretty much 2 generations of winemaking. But there's a mother and daughter who hand-dug caves underneath their house in the early 1990s, and this is the wine off their place, and I was fortunate to have dinner in their house last spring and brought some of those bottles back. So this is Jacques Bavard from Montrachet. Haven't had this one yet. This was a birthday present for my brother.
Nice.
And this is Uni Blanc from our friends Ryan and Nicole Pease from Paso.
Wow, what a label.
Yeah.
Some artwork gone into that.
There was marijuana involved, I'm sure. I'll show you one more, since we're on New World. This is one of my iconic game changer wines. This is the Clary Ranch Syrah from Arnott Roberts in Sonoma Coast. And this is the first time I had a wine that was like a red wine from California that was 11% alcohol and perfectly ripe and didn't miss a beat. And it's just spicy and savory. And these guys just do a fantastic job.
When you're picking a wine to go with your dinner, is it hard to choose one?
We don't collect for the sake of collecting. We collect for learning. And, there's really nothing in here if we opened that I would be sad is gone.
Okay.
An empty bottle is worth so much more than a full one, because you've got the experience of sharing it with someone and the memory of drinking it.
Aside from his extensive collection of inspirational wines, Anthony's cellar is also an archive of wines he's made.
This is Grenache.
Okay.
So this is from 2015. This is my favorite vintage of Grenache that we've made.
Why was that year so good?
15 was a very, very challenging vintage. It was probably the hardest, lowest rainfall year of the drought, compounded with 4 straight years of drought conditions. And then we had a very cold, sort of wet but not rainy spring, and that created a terrible fruit set. So we lost about 40% of our fruit in that year. Then in summer, we saw 3 inches of rain in July in one storm. I think the data going back said the most rain they'd ever seen in the month of July was 1/4 of an inch, and we saw 3 overnight. So that sort of relieved some of that drought stress on the vines, and what you ended up with were these wines that were powerful but elegant at the same time. I mean, it's sort of like throwing a football lineman in a ballet dress, and it works. And that's what this wine is to me. I mean, I want wines that evolve.
Okay.
They evolve over time. They evolve on your palate. They're not what you expected them to be. They create an experience that's more than just that sensory of drinking them. So.
And you're probably one of the youngest winemakers in Paso.
I'm still on the younger end of the spectrum.
But you have such a good reputation. Does that go to your head?
Sometimes. I try not to. I love what I do. And I mean, I think you guys said it earlier, it's the journey as opposed to the destination. And it's nice to get some recognition from time to time from the press, because a lot of times you're head down and working your butt off and doing night harvests or cleaning the drains or fixing a RO unit, or, the worst thing I've had to do is clean out the septic system, because, 40% of the job is being a janitor. And then every once in a while you'll meet someone in the tasting room that says, we drank your wine at our wedding, or, those are the things that really do it. And for me, I've always made the wines that I want to drink, as opposed to trying to make the wines that are going to get the credit from someone else. And I really do think that that's the best, or the only way to make true wines. And if you're making true wines, then at some point they'll be recognized.
So where did you come up with the name Nonesuch?
My Missouri roots, my favorite book of all time is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Mm-hmm. And as part of that story, Huckleberry Finn and Jim are floating down the Mississippi River, which I grew up on. And they're in this little town in Arkansas, northern Arkansas, and they meet up with these two. They're called the Duke and the Dauphin, or at least that's what they call themselves, but they're definitely not royalty. And they're maybe more swindlers than anything else. But they decide they want to put on Shakespeare in this little town in Arkansas, and no one comes. And so the next night they put on a show called The Royal Nonesuch Farm, which is billed as a dramatic comedy. And half the townspeople come out, and it's just the Duke naked on the stage, painted, dancing around, doing like crab dance. And half the townspeople they're so pissed off that they've been sort of swindled into this joke that rather than not go the second night, they tell all the other townspeople, hey, you need to come see this show. Okay. So they sell out 2 nights of this. And the third night, getting a little greedy, now all the townspeople come, but they've stuffed their pockets with all the vegetables from their gardens to throw at the Duke on the stage. And before they get into, after they've taken their money, before they get into the show, the Duke and the Dauphin and Huck and Jim all scurry out to the raft and go down the river. And to me, it's just sort of this constant reminder never to take yourself too seriously and to remember your heritage and your roots and have fun with what you do.
So what have we got here?
So this is the 2016 Royal Nonesuch Farm.
Okay.
And this is a co-ferment, meaning that we picked all the grapes at the same time and we fermented them together. So you can blend wine or you can blend grapes, and we chose to blend grapes here. And the first vintage of wine, we didn't have the entire vineyard producing, so the blend's going to evolve over the next couple of years. This first vintage is 50% Syrah, 30% Graciano, and 20% Grenache. One wine, one site, red.
All here.
All here. So we fermented the grapes in concrete, and then it spent the first year of aging in neutral, what we call puncheons. They're big barrels, and these were no new flavors in them, so they're just sort of a neutral vessel. And puncheons breathe a little slower than a regular barrel, which this is a regular barrel, just because they're a little larger. And then once we hit that year mark, we racked it into a foudre, and a foudre is a really big oak tank. And it's going to spend the last little bit in oak tank, and we're going to bottle this June 1st.
Okay. So is that why it hasn't got a label on it yet?
Yeah, I just pulled this out of the sample valve of the oak tank.
Oh, wow.
And this is what we call a barrel sample, though it's really more of an oak tank sample.
Ooh.
Bold.
Yeah.
Spicy.
Very well. Very spicy.
Yeah.
Creamy though, still too.
Yeah, still approachable. Again, we want wines that evolve, so they should be a little tight early, and then as they age, especially in bottle, we want to see them loosen up and become more interesting, more savory, more spicy, but also a little more approachable on the palate.
All right. Well, cheers! Congratulations!
Cheers! Thank you
to your first year. Oh, chicken. Let's go get that chicken.
Let's check that chicken. All right, let's pull this bird. What do you say?
Go for it.
If you carve it right now, all the juices that we've preserved will fall out.
Okay.
Whereas if you let it rest for 20 minutes, then the juices sort of integrate back into the meat.
Mm-hmm. And which wine would you recommend drinking with this chicken?
All of them.
Mm-hmm.
The beautiful thing about chicken is it's like what doesn't go well with chicken, you know? Everything tastes like it, everything drinks with it. We're gonna make a nice juicy, you can go hearty red wines with the dark meat or white wines with the white meat.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna take the carcass tomorrow, we're gonna make a stock out of it, and we're gonna make risotto for tomorrow night's dinner with the leftovers.
All planned.
Hey, Ramona, do you wanna do a wishbone? Let's do a wishbone. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Oh, you won!
You win!
Quick, make a wish.
Yeah, quick, make a wish. Do you wish for another chickie?
Yeah. Chicken just been. What? Chicken. I want a chicken.
Don't forget the oysters for me.
I will save you the oysters and the Pope's nose.
I never knew about the Pope's nose. Is it the 2 thin bits that go either side?
Here.
So, okay.
Don't be afraid.
To be honest, I don't really like the skin. So if it's all skin, okay.
That's the best part, other than the oysters.
But there's no meat in there.
Just eat it.
Okay.
Quit complaining. There's your oyster.
What's the best bit of the chicken? So you've got a red here, I've got a white.
Yep.
And I think you're right, they both go.
I think pairing is all about enjoyment. Whatever you like is going to work. Ramona, do you want a piece of chicken?
Yeah.
Yeah? What's that? It's really good chicken? Thank you.
What is your passion? You love farming, but obviously winemaking has become such an important part of your life. You know, which one is more important to you?
Yes, Ramona. I need more chicken. That's my passion right there. You know, I'm getting more into the farming because I'm seeing that's really the way forward to making better wines. I'm probably better as a winemaker than I am a farmer. And Hillary certainly makes us a lot better at farming than I would be without. But for me, it's about working the land and having the land become what this and this and that, you know.
And that's what defines you.
That's what defines the Royal Nonesuch farm, at least.
Okay.
I hope I'm a little more complex than that, but who knows?
Well, as you said before, you are no better than your grapes.
Nope. And you are what you eat.
You are what you eat.
You want more chicken?
The Winemakers podcast is a production of Cellar Media, hosted by me, Louise Houghton. Executive producer and creative director, Lauren Mattick. Co-produced by Louise Houghton and John Meek. Original score, editing, and sound design by John Meek of 10 Minutes Early. Live sound engineering by Dean Lee. Additional writing by Paula Carvajal. Additional editing by Miguel Coez of the Music Interval Theory Academy. And additional sound engineering by Brian Vasquez. The Winemakers series was created by Julia Perez. For show notes, links, and more, please visit wnmkrs.com/podcast. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Winemakers Series. And please subscribe, share, and rate us on iTunes.
Cellar Media.